Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. This is a Tor book from 2021. It is a fantasy novel. Yeah, I got it from my library, obviously. In terms of the May the Force Read With You readathon, this book gets me up to Sith Lord because I have read another ability prompt, which is a dark side prompt for Force Lightning. Read a book you're shocked you haven't read yet. And I was shocked that I hadn't read this book yet because I really liked Through the Cerulean Sea, House of the Cerulean Sea, which I read last year, and then I had a friend tell me that I would probably really like this book, so I'm surprised it took me so long to get to it, so that's why I'm using it for this prompt. So yeah, moving on up there in the ranks of the Sith Order, which is fun. So, while I enjoyed this sweet, meditative, and wholesome take on death and dying, it did make me cry a couple times, upon reflection, its heavy-handedness could have been toned down, and the world building is a bit loose. Yeah, this isn't going to be one of my bubbly, I loved this reviews. This is going to be a bit of a, has some critique. Not my favorite thing to do, but that's what happens. There are no spoilers in this review. What's it about? Welcome to Karen's Crossing. The tea is hot, the scones are fresh, and the dead are just passing through. When a reaper comes to collect Wallace from his own funeral, Wallace begins to suspect he might be dead. And when Hugo, the owner of a peculiar tea shop, promises to help him cross over, Wallace decides he's definitely dead. But even in death, he's not ready to abandon a life he barely lived. So when Wallace is given 1 week to cross over, he sets about living a lifetime in 7 days. That's not really the plot. Anyway, I love books in this vein, ones that provide an interesting take on what happens when you die or when death is a character. The latter is more my favorite. And the latter actually doesn't happen in this book, but I do think this book falls under the category of not horror ghost theme. It definitely does because Wallace is a ghost. This book is very easy and fast to read, despite it not being short. It's not like it's a tiny little book here. For a book I could not put down, I did read it in 1 day. I can't say that I loved it though. The magic system surrounding death and dying was never fully explained, as we're basically told that the characters don't know, so we don't know, and no one else cares enough to look into it. That wasn't a huge deal, as knowing more wouldn't have changed the story, presumably, but it felt a bit flat to me. I was kind of like, I want to know a bit more about this, even just more about the ghosts, even more about other ghost areas, other ghosts, kind of thing like that. We're kind of restricted to one area the entire book, and we never learn about kind of the outside world. Well, if there's so many people are dying each day, where do they go? Why is it just this one place? Anyway. Perhaps I'm also torn about the messages within it, as I found them, while important, so heavy-handed. It's frustrating because I could see what the novel was doing and what it was saying, and I agree with all of it. But maybe that's boring, or maybe it's too didactic that I was kind of like, yeah, I know, live life to the fullest, YOLO. I just felt like there was too much preaching, and that the novel could have been cut down or replaced some of that with more time with the characters interacting. What I loved about The House of the Cerulean Sea was the humor, the slow burn love story, and the world build. It also wasn't the most intricate, but at least it was an allegory. But in this one, while there are funny moments and a romance, the latter came about way too quickly. The romance moves slowly, but the idea that they are into one another is there from the initial page. There's no kind of build up on that. Wallace is kind of like, this dude is hot. I like him, It's as obvious as a romance novel and nowhere near as passionate. I did not ship them. I assumed they'd be into one another, which was nowhere near as fun as when two characters gradually grow to like one another, or an enemies to lovers romance, things like that. I don't know, I guess insta love is not my favorite trope in romance. I also found Hugo to be a bit too perfect. May was too quirky and a bit flat. Nelson was only there to serve as old man wisdom, and Wallace got over himself way too quickly. The found family aspect also felt a bit forced. I never wanted to visit the tea shop, if you will, like I have other fun found families in novels. Yet, I want to reiterate this. I did enjoy reading it. I'm torn because retroactively, I understand the issues the book has in my mind, but while reading it, I really liked it and I couldn't put it down. As I said, I cried. I cried a couple times. Then again, I also cried in Hocus Pocus 2, and I cry in every movie where kids reunite with their parents. I cry at Moana every time the grandma dies, and I've seen the movie like 40 times because my kids are obsessed with it, so that might not be saying much. Anyway. I think I just like Clune's easy prose, great descriptions, quirkiness, and normalized queerness in his novels. His writing style really draws you in, and his descriptions are vivid and easy to picture. If you liked House in the Cerulean Sea, you will probably enjoy this one. They are very, very similar, albeit in a different setting and theme, but if you haven't read any Clune, I suggest checking that one out first before this one. So, yeah, I don't know, it's so hard because I'm like, it's a good book. It's a decent, good book. It's slow burn. It's kind of like a slice of life in a way. It has an important message, but I just was like, I didn't love it, and there were things about it that I was just like, I know why I didn't like it. Anyway, there is one pretty big thing actually that really brought it down for me, which is kind of where these other things are connected to it. But it's a huge spoiler. So I'm going to talk about that now. Thank you for watching if you're not sticking around for the spoiler, and if you are, here we go. The ending was extremely predictable. There really was only two ways it could go, I suppose, other than like a nuclear apocalypse. But it went the way I assumed it would. Like if there were two options, nuclear apocalypse aside, I was like 80% certain it would go that way and 20% certain it would go the other way, and it definitely went 80% way. Wallace lives again, rather than actually dying. Had Clune made it the depressing ending, it would have toned down the whimsy and made the story far more hard-hitting. The novel's ending takes what could have been a powerful meditation on grief and turned it into just kind of like a happy romance. Now, romance is a valid genre. I know it's escapism and people are allowed to have that. I like reading the romance once in a while. I'm not insulting romance here. I just think if Clune wanted to make this a poignant message or impart some kind of lesson, Wallace should have died. The rules-changing Deus Ex Machina aspect of the ending pretty much negated all of the important lessons the book had been trying to impart earlier so heavy-handedly. Now, I haven't watched this because it would probably kill me with grief, but isn't the reason a dog's purpose is so sad is to teach us something? I just don't see why the novel focused on so much grief and moving on if it's going to renege on these concepts for its main characters. It seemed disingenuous to the purpose, I guess you could say. Or perhaps it was because Hugo and Wallace didn't have that soul-crushing love that burned so bright my eyes fell off the page for me. Because their love story is kind of basic, the resolution felt to me too neat and tidy and left me feeling absolutely nothing. Then again, perhaps they got a happy ending to go against the kill your queers trope. Personally, I think, at least I would hope, that we're at a point now where we can kill off our queer characters so long as they are fully fleshed people and or not the only LGBTQ person in the book. So I have no idea if that is why the ending is the way it is. If you don't know what that is, basically there is a very, very strong history of queer characters either getting killed off or not having a happy ending. Generally one of them dies if it's a couple at the end, something like that. And that is something that was a really pervasive trope in literature up until like the early 2000s even. So it's something that people are aware of when they're writing generally. So it seems like there are so many great LGBT plus stories, and there is a place for them, at least in certain parts of the world, that I would hope that we don't need to worry about this trope anymore. But I don't know, it's hard because it's like a balance between like, how much are we beholden to the problems of the past and how much are we allowed to kind of move forward and forget those things. I guess not forget, but move forward from those things. It's complicated. It's complicated. This book is not complicated. It is a fun, nice little book, though. It's a good book. There's nothing that will... I mean, there was a part that really made me sad, but in like a way that was helpful, not a way that made me like disturbed. So, a child dies, okay? Ugh.